What's going on with our lighting here? There we go. That's better. Don't know what's going on. We are live. It is 6:59. Right on time at 7 o'clock. Why does it seem like it's not as bright as it normally is? Hopefully everybody's doing good tonight. What I want to talk to you guys about tonight is the 4.3 liter V6 testing. So I had a cam ground from the guys in Oregon. So we did a small base circle regrind that I want to test. So I did some, custom specs, I guess. And so we're going to try that. I'm going to run it on the V6. I have already done the valve spring upgrade on it. So I'd done that previously, thinking that I was going to be testing a camshaft that I had, but unfortunately I got the wrong cam. This is for a later Vortec headed balance shaft motor, and the camshaft that I got was not that. So, live and learn. And also, there's just not a couple things. One is it's fairly expensive to get a camshaft for this thing, and also they just didn't really have the camshaft that had the specs that I wanted. And so I had something done to my specs that I wanted. So I'm going to test that. And so we'll run that. So I have the springs on it. I just have to, basically swap the cam in. And it had already been taken apart because I didn't realize that the cam was not the cam until it was on the dyno. And I had taken the front cover and everything off, and the intake manifold, the lifters, all that stuff were out. And then I went to do the cam swap and thought, hey, this is one of these things is not like the other one. So it's been sitting for a while. But I want to get this camshaft in, and then we'll run it carbureted because it has the Edelbrock intake manifold, has a 4-barrel on it, has a distributor on it. It has stock heads on it, the stock bottom, and the motor is basically stock, other than us now putting a camshaft in, and the the carbureted, the dual plane, single plane ish kind of Edelbrock intake manifold. But my question is, if you take a look at the thumbnail, hopefully you guys have taken a look at it. One of the things I'm going to do is I'm definitely going to run a turbo on it, because one of the things I want to do is I want to make more than the guys from Power Nation made on their V6. So that will be fun. Just I like both of those guys, and so they do awesome work over there. But that doesn't mean that if somebody sets a bar somewhere that you can't just go, hey, look, I'm going to definitely try to do better than that. They did a good job. They ported their own heads. They put forged pistons in it and stuff, and so they did it the way that you're kind of supposed to do it. Then they put a shelf cam on it, I think, and then put a 4-hole fuel injection on it. And they use the same intake manifold that I have, and then they blew through it with a turbo, that's all fantastic. And like I said, they do a great job over there. I'll do it differently than that. And so I'm going to essentially make my own turbo kit. What I want to do is I won't use stock exhaust manifolds. We'll use the shorty headers that I have, and then we'll route. I'll see if I can flip them. I don't remember if I can or not. I don't know if that's symmetrical, but we'll route it all together and then come up into a common 3-inch V-band, and then we'll be able to hook our turbo up to that and run our turbo. We'll run a GTX 3584 RS turbo from richardholderperformance.com. Shameless plug. Or maybe something smaller. We have, I think, a couple of turbos that we still have from things that we've tested, or maybe things that we were thinking about for twins. So I might be able to run a 3076 or something like that. We're not trying to make very much power. We're talking about, making 500 horsepower or something. So any of these turbos will easily do that. And so if we're starting off with something like on their turbo, on their V6, they made 260 or 270 at the flywheel, which is good. Right now, the motor's down closer to 220, I think. And so with the cam, I'm hoping we get up near 250 or something. And so that would be good. The porting that they did on the heads probably, helps a pretty good bit. And which would be nice. I don't know that I want to. I might go look at that. I might look at those heads and see what I can do on the porting. I'm sure I can do some chamber work or something, which depends on. I don't know that I need to do that. The reasoning being that I'm not great at head porting. I mean, I could do it a little bit. This is an iron. These are iron heads. Not cool. And also, if it's just another pound of boost, it's not really worth that. But so we'll build the setup so that we can run our turbo. It'll be intercooled. It'll be fuel injected. It'll be all the good things that you want to do. And so that will all be fine. That's all planned for it. And you see that I have videos up already. We already ran one of Jason's V6 motors with a little turbo on it. Already ran the last V6 that I did for my buddy Harold. He has it in his boat. But before he put that in with a mild cam and stuff in it, before he did that, nothing's still running. So it's great. We ran that with a Torque Storm supercharger, so it did good, and it made good power. And so we obviously want to step up a little bit. And I think honestly that all that I would have to do is we'll probably take it apart, put ring gap in it, and then put the stock heads back on and do all that stuff. And so I think we can get there. I think it's just a matter of running. I would run E85 on it. And then we'd run intercooled. I'm going to run it also with a different intake manifold, which I think will probably help things. So that's planned. But in doing all of this, in looking through all this and strategizing this, what's going on with the V6, what I wanted to do was I looked around. I kind of wanted to find out to see if there's a turbo kit out there already. And it turns out that there is. And there's an inexpensive one. So the photo that I have up on the thumbnail is a photo from eBay or Amazon or wherever. So that lots of people are, I guess, are selling these things, selling these kits. And what it is are essentially stock exhaust manifolds. It probably is a stock exhaust manifold on one side, I'm thinking, and then a cross under tube, and then it goes over to the other manifold, which somebody did a casting, and they did a stock type manifold, with the exception that it has an entry for the cross under pipe, and then has a T3 turbo flange on it. Looks like a divided flange too. I don't know if it's divided in there. I don't know why you need to do that. But at any rate, it mounts a T3 turbo. You get a T3 turbo with this. You get the ball socket flanges with lengths of tubing that you could bolt to the stock exhaust manifolds, and then you just finish it, presumably to fit under whatever chassis you have. You have an S10 or you have a sandrail or whatever you have. So you could just make it so that it clears all the things that you need to clear, different transmissions and various things. So that's all fine. For the dyno, we just would connect the pipe, one pipe to the other pipe. That's all good. And then it has a T3 turbo, which I don't like. Now we might be able to make, well, I don't know what size turbo that is. I didn't look into it enough. We don't want to run a T3, but it got me thinking that I can do the thing the way that I want to do it when we're going for the semi-big power output. I don't know that that's really a big power output. All we're doing essentially is doubling the NA power output, which is not too hard to do. You throw some E85 in it, get good distribution and timing and stuff, and you have an intercooler, and then you have 1 bar of boost, and you should be close. If it takes 16 or 17 pounds, that's still okay, because we have cold air and we have all the things that we need. And so I don't think that will be too much of a problem. Don't know how strong the stock pistons and rods are. Don't know how strong the stock that split crank is. But at any rate, we'll try it and see what happens. One of the things I might have to do, and this is one of the discussions that we have, but the poll will be for tonight. Start a poll. Okay, should I test the low buck eBay turbo kit for the 4.3 liter V6 before doing my own kit? So the thing is, do you want to see that tested? Do you want to see this fairly inexpensive? I think it's $500 or $600 or something like that is what you can get it for. I think I've seen them as high as $800 or $900, but I saw a couple that were, I think, around $600 or something. So you could, you could get that. And there's obviously no intercooler for that. So we would make all the discharge stuff, but we would be running an air to water intercooler on there. Maybe we could even run the chili bomb on there. I don't know if that's enough intercooler, but we have a couple of different intercoolers. We could even run the one that we run on the LS all the time, that Pro Charger one, or one of the RHP intercoolers. We can run that on there too. That's all fine. we'll have, you know, at that sort of power level, at that sort of boost and power and flow level, there's lots of different cores that we can run. Heck, I think I still have the dual core that we ran with the Honda, maybe. I have to see. I don't know if I have that. That's probably still with a Honda, I think. And anyway, we have a couple of different cores that we can use. That's not going to be a problem. And running the air to water will make life easy because we can, you know, we just have dyno water that we can run. By the way, I spoke with Evan, Evan Perkins, who now is in charge of Westech. So he's bought it. And so he's now in charge. And so I'm still going to be doing some testing down there with Evan. Obviously, things change. And the more things change, the more things stay the same. And so I'll be working with him. So I'm excited. Troy is still there. I'll get to Ish is somewhat still there. And so he can come in. And I just like hanging out with those guys. So it will still be cool. So I'll be running this V6 at Westech, which will be good. And so let me know if you want me to test this inexpensive V6 turbo kit. I don't know how far that T3 will take us. We did run a T3 on the other V6 that we ran, and it worked fairly well. I think at 250 horsepower, that's not maybe quite as much as the 3800 was making once we did the heads and cam and stuff with it. But that's enough to spin the turbo that we would want to run on it anyway. So I don't think that that's going to be an issue. And I don't mind it making peak power, you know, a little higher than where the crossover is. I'd like it to make peak power at like, let's say 6,000 or something like that. There, again, like with any of these stock applications, with stock available piston to valve clearance and then stock retainer to seal clearance on these Vortec heads, there's a limit to what you can do with camshafts. But you know, we can still try to make work what we need to work. And like I said, the intake manifold that I'm going to do should shift RPM up a little bit and flow a good bit better than the intake manifold, the carbureted intake manifold that we currently have, in addition to being port injected. So it will be better for, you know, equal distribution and stuff, which would be, I think it will be important when we're trying to, you know, go to the edge in terms of power output. So let's see what you guys got doing. See what you guys got going on today. Test the new Gen 5 platform. I have videos up on the LV1 and LV3. They're very much more powerful than this one that I'm testing. The one that I'm testing is 200. Those are 300. So it's a big difference in power, even just stock. East Texas is in the house. Thinking of buying a 4.3 single cab 4x4. Greetings. I have a 4.3 I pulled for an LS swap. I'm very interested in this. Actually in the process of building an 02 S10 with a 4.3. Jimmy and I have been kicking around the idea of having an S10. I think it would be cool. Planning on putting a turbo on my Bravada. Just put the marine intake manifold on the injection. Unfortunately, I'm not sure what happened, but it spun a bearing. Oh, 200,000 miles. Yeah, howdy. Lehigh Acres, Florida. I don't know if I've been there. I have been. We've been from the top to the bottom of Florida in our quest for going in the swamps and finding I went down and did a Burmese python search, so that was kind of cool. I wondered if this thing was. It's this white on the coat that's color balancing the thing. It's freaking it out. So it was affecting the camera. I haven't worked on many 4.3 liters. Is it based on a 5.7 V8? Yes, the 4.3 liter, this V6 is basically 3/4 of a small block Chevy. The head design is the same. I mean, everything is basically the same. I got it out of time by one tooth and tried starting up. I'm not sure what happened. If you skipped a tooth, you could have hit a valve possibly. I've already bought the turbo already. I just need the exhaust manifold. Fort Myers, Florida. Lots of Florida here, dude. That's great, man. I love to go into Florida, mostly because of the snakes and reptiles. I did go on my first swamp boat ride the last time we were there, which was cool. Can you send an email to me about an 07 Pontiac Grand Prix 3.8 liter? What is it you want to know? This is the best place to ask a question because you have me here for an hour. So this is the best place to get an answer. I'm going to be building so I can run 2 kits instead of turbos. My cam came from Iski. So Iski has 4.3 liter cams. Did you have a custom one done, or do they have shelf cams? What's up? Long time no see. Hope all's well. No point in doing a 4.3 without E85. Might as well go 6 liter with a power adder either and be done with it. Go with a 6 liter? No. This is a 4.3 liter V6, so can't make that into a 6 liter. Take the eBay one and improve it yourself. Well, Jimmy and I were kicking around just adapting that from the T3 to a T4, which is the easy adapter. Or actually, it won't go to a T4. It will go to a V-band. It'll go to a 3-inch V-band, which, again, is an easy thing to do. In fact, I have a T3 to a 3-inch V-band already. The turbo that we put on there, now that I think about it, is not a 3-inch V-band. So I need to call Jimmy and tell him don't do it as a 3-inch V-band, because we would never run anything that's going to be a 3-inch V-band turbo on there. They'll all be smaller than that. So we don't need that. But the thing that I would worry about improving it might not be an issue. I don't know what those stock exhaust manifolds or the way that they did these turbo manifolds. I don't know what they flow. I don't know how well they would work. They probably wouldn't be a problem at this power level that we're talking about. Like I said, we're only doubling the NA power output, so I don't think it'd be a problem. But it just, I don't know. It'd be just as easy because I'm going to have to do welding anyways. It'd be just as easy just to complete one with a set of shorty headers. About 3582 from Max Speeding. Okay. Are the RHP intercoolers available yet? I don't think that they are. Would you be interested in making a low buck, small buck Chevy turbo kit? Looking to turbo my L31. There are lots of small buck Chevy turbo kits out there. There's a lot of low dollar ones. If you just do a search for that stuff's already out there. You should be able to get 300 horsepower pretty easy with what, Spiky Mikey? 300 horsepower from this V6. We're looking at more like 500. Test to see the real numbers between the two turbo kits. Always should use the marine intake. So much stuff I need to know and learn, trying to process myself. I would like to use a marine intake. I just don't want to buy a marine intake. It's amazing how things change. I've driven 3 S10s to the crusher. Now people like them. Got all the exhaust manifold bolts out of my L94. Had to cut all the heads off with an angle grinder, then just grab them with vice grips, and they all turned out. Okay. You're lucky that a lot of them break off, and then you got to weld it and do all that stuff. Tennessee's in the house. Need some decent and affordable heads for the 4.3. I agree. I talked to the guys at Summit about that. I told them that they needed that to be a thing. Building a 4.3 liter now. I bought a regrind camshaft on eBay. There's some guy out of Texas that sells regrind camshafts. Okay. I'm 69 Jeeps here with a Turbo 400 wanting to swap Dauntless out of the 4.3. Might as well pop an old one, cheap turbo, and see if it works. It will definitely work. I mean, putting a turbo on anything, if you have the air, fuel, and timing right, and you have an intercooler on it, it will work fine. I still like the AMC 4-liter inline 6. Work is going to put a 4.3 in an old dune buggy. I'm sure I'll be curious about the turbo kit. Test eBay, get data, make the kit. You're on your way. Yeah, I agree. I don't think that I'm not thinking that we need to make that one better. I just don't. I think there's a limit to how far we could get with a T3 turbo. Been working with Max Speeding rod for 2 years now. Cool to see a comparison between a 5.7 and a 4.3 with a cheap T3. And from what I've seen, the cheaper small Chevy kits aren't even welded all the way. I wouldn't ever run a single T3 turbo on a 5.7. That's pretty small. Maybe a T3 T4 hybrid, but even that I probably wouldn't do. I definitely would go T4 or like ours is a V-band. Vortec 4.3 or pre-Vortec small block stall heads, or is an LV3. It's not an LV1 or LV3. This one is a Vortec headed 4.3. So this one's a 1997, I believe, is what this motor is. I'd have to check the thing, but that's about what year it is. So it's like a 200 horsepower version. And now it doesn't have any of the fuel injection on there. It just has a carbureted intake manifold on there, and that's about what it makes. It makes 220, I think. Because that's what all the kids are doing. All the cool kids, anyway. Go take a look at this and see. There. Oh, no, that's right? Oh, no, those are my documents. Yeah, I don't think I can get there from there. I'm gonna go take a look here. Taking a look at the 4.3 liter stuff. My documents, dyno results, 4.3 liter V6, 4.3 liter test, long tube shorties. Yes, 231 horsepower and 285 foot-pounds of torque. 231 horsepower happened all the way up at 4,700 RPM. And peak torque came at 3,700 RPM. So, big power. Big, crazy power. Richard, do you have any recommendations for 4-volt main conversion on a 460 block? I've never tried that, I don't think. I'd have to ask the machine shop. You ever work with the older NASCAR stuff? From the research I've done, some 4.3 bores to 5 liters. I wonder why you can't buy stroker cranks for them. You can buy different cranks for them. I know that the Busch Grand National stuff they did. And I thought that later on when they went to the 5 liter stuff that they did stroker versions of those as well. Built my Ford to 4.3 liter 2 years ago, cammed up, bigger throttle body, 27-pound injector. I just smoothed the ports and mapped them. Gets 310, 385 at the tires now. Ton of fun. What Ford are you talking about? And it makes 310 horsepower at the tires out of a V6? Out of a naturally aspirated V6, or is it a turbo thing? Brazil's in the house. Are planning on running turbo 4.3 with fuel injection or carbureted? We'll run it fuel injected. RHP 1200 turbo. Unclear how a 5.3 and a 496 could possibly take the same turbo. I know you always say choose a turbo for your horsepower goal. It's hard to understand that 2 engines take the same one. Why is that hard to understand? It's very easy to understand. If they're both 1,000 horsepower motors, that turbo will support 1,000 horsepower on either one of those motors. One of them will just have boost a lot sooner than the other. The 496 will have boost a lot sooner than a 325-inch motor will. My 4.3 I'm building is for trailer race truck, the 99 Speedway. Edmunds performance engine. Oh, so are you building like a real deal one? Somebody had offered me, and I need to get back to him maybe, some old racy intake manifolds and aluminum intakes. Probably like I can't remember now whether it's a shallow valve angle, like an 18-degree head or something like that. That would be for a more serious builds. The Mustangs came with a 300 horsepower V6. What was it, a 3.8 liter? Is that what the Mustangs were? Should I test a low buck eBay turbo kit for the 4.3 before doing my own kit? 90% are saying yes. Yeah, the Camaros had the like the 285 or 300 horsepower LV1 or LV3 V6 too. And then you just built a bigger version of that, I'm assuming, is what you're talking about. I remember trying a different turbo when we ran the turbo on Jason's V6. We tried a different size turbo, and it turned out, it seemed like it was not working or was laggy or something like that. So I'll be curious to see. But we ran I think when I ran the 3800, I think I put that GT45 on there, which would not be an ideal choice for that, but it was more than big enough for what we were doing. And the 3584 would be way better than that, than the GT45 was. Because at 500 horsepower, and any of those will do that fairly easy. Is a 1200 big enough to run as a single turbo without too much back pressure on a 496? For what power level? Not if you want to make 1200. If you want to make 1200, that's not what I would pick. But if I remember right, you weren't trying to make that much power. Did you do any 4.3 test videos? I think if you do any turbo kit testing, I'd like to see a big bang with it. We're not going to do a big bang with this motor on the 4.3. And I have done, there are 4.3, there's NA stuff, turbo stuff, and blower stuff, all in the 4.3 liter V6. I have videos up on all of that. Plus, if I was going to do a big bang, you'd have to put twins on it, right? You wouldn't. I think that crank would break long before we had to worry about that. I watched your video on turbocharging the junkyard Gen 6. What stall converter would you need to spool a turbo to make it boost? Well, let's not worry about the converter right now. What is all the rest of the stuff? What motor do you have? What's the motor configuration? How much power do you want to make? And what turbocharger are you talking about? Because if you're not making, like, you're hoping you're not wanting to make 1500 or 2000 horsepower, because that's not the right conversation. But if you're making a realistic amount, you're not going to have to worry about turbo spool up on a big block. I know for a fact 431 handle 9,000 RPM, but he missed fifth and grabbed third. Yeah, back hole in it's not good. A guy told me he had 229 crankshaft in a Vortec 4.3. So he shifted at 8,200. You wouldn't need 229 horsepower. You wouldn't need 8,200 to go 229 horsepower. I mean, ours does that stock. So is it 329 or 429 for an 8,200 RPM? Like those Busch Grand National motors made a lot of power. 454 making 700 horsepower, turbo 400 trans. Yeah, you're not concerned with that at all. 700 horsepower 454. Yeah, you could run a stock converter depending on what camshaft you have. The camshaft is really going to kind of dictate where you're going to want to be converter-wise, and then what RPM range you're running depending on the other things that are on the motor, like how much camshaft you have, what heads you have, what intake manifold especially that you have. But if this is a 454 with a mild cam and a dual plane, like it kind of should be for 700 horsepower, and then you put the G42 turbo on there, on a 454, it will work fine. Getaway, what's going on? 229 cubic inch V6 crankshaft and a 4.3. Oh, 229 crankshaft in a Vortec 4.3. Okay. So, okay. Yeah, I'm not going to get into the short stroke stuff because that's way more valve train. Although maybe with the split crank, it's a problem. You run the stock cam in your 4.3. I have a stock cam in the 4.3. I've already run that a bunch, and I had a camshaft ground already, a custom one ground for the 4.3. Finishing up at work. Glad I made it. Glad you're here. Have to be around, have to be part of it all. 5.3 with 862 heads, LS6 intake, inch and 7/8 headers. I just got a red hot cam for it. My heads have dual 625 springs or 862 goods for the 5.3. Looking to make 450 horsepower of the crank. Yeah, that combination with that camshaft will at least be close to that. It might be 430 or 440, but at the flywheel, but not at the tires. But that's a good cam. A red hot cam is not the cam that I would pick for that combination. I would pick a hot rod instead of a red hot, because the red hot didn't really gain anything. I mean, it gained 4 or 5 or whatever. It wasn't that much, but it will work. Because I ran the stock cam, I ran the BTR Truck Norris cam, I ran the BTR red hot or hot rod cam and the red hot cam, and there just wasn't enough of a gain on the 5.3 with that. I did it with 799 hits, but it's going to be the same with this. Thanks for all the videos. Thank you guys for watching all the videos. What about LX5 from an Oldsmobile had to break in? What about it? What is your? Did you have a question about it? I'm not that familiar with an LX5. Was that the like the Aurora motor? Yeah. Okay. I didn't know that it was called that. It's a North Star derivative V6. Okay. So hot rod cam, did you do a comparison between an L31 and a 5.3? I've never run a stock L31. I've only run an L31 with a carbureted intake manifold on it. This thing with a turbo setup, it's a short star engine. Okay, yeah. No, I've never run one of those motors. I don't ever remember seeing one run at West Tech either. .4 liter short star. Sequential fuel injection. Fancy overhead cam stuff. By the Premium Engine Group at GM. Ooh. .215 horsepower and 234 foot-pounds. Okay. Drag van, we'll see you later, man. Testing with turbo setup. It's a short star engine. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be comparable to the 3800, which was like a 200 horsepower motor, and this 4.3 liter V6, because those are all. I mean, it was rated at 215. A double overhead cam motor should be a little bit better than these, but it's going to do what these do in terms of multiplying that out. I don't know if people have done any other than reground cams for something like that. Although that should have better head flow than these other ones do. The head flow on these 4.3 liter V6 heads are not great. They need to be more. In fact, now it makes me wonder about the camshaft that I did for this. I'm gonna have to look and see if I don't know if I'm gonna need to do something to the guides. I might want to get the Vortec. Vortec valve guide tool. There we go. Comp cams. Howard cams, $86. I wonder if I can do that with the motor on the with the head installed. But then I'm not going to be able to use the spring package that I have, I don't think. It's interesting that today I posted something on Instagram and Facebook, and I have a couple of announcements. So remind me that I have a couple of announcements. Posted something on Instagram and Facebook today about exhaust manifolds. So that every exhaust manifold is a turbo manifold, because essentially it is. I mean, we can run anything. We can run these stock manifolds, these stock type manifolds. And obviously, these are dedicated turbo manifolds for this 4.3 liter V6. But with the LS stuff, you can run the truck manifolds as long, the fitment becomes an issue. Will they fit around accessories, and will they fit in a chassis and that kind of stuff? But otherwise, the stock manifolds definitely can be used just to feed all of the exhaust to the turbo. And then obviously, good things happen. Good turbo-y goodness things happen. You can make all that work. And then the question becomes, I pointed out that some of the exhaust manifolds are better than others. Like an LS truck manifold is really good for a turbo. It's fantastic. It flows enough. It's got really good heat retention, and it's cast, and it's going to last forever. And so it's got a lot of good things going for it as long as it fits. Some of them, like the Dodge Ram that I pointed out, not that great. Not that great in terms of flow. We know because when we do a header test on those, even shorty headers compared to those, but certainly long tube headers, we get a lot of power change from those because they're just not great. Even an SRT8 manifold, which is way better than the Dodge Ram manifold on the Hemi stuff, for the pickups, the SRT8 stuff is way better because those Ram ones are terrible. Now, I've run turbos with those Ram manifolds, and it does work. But the thing that you have to consider is at what point, at what power level and exhaust flow level, the attending exhaust flow level, at what point is the exhaust manifold, and then also the consideration would be whatever the tubing is you have going from the exhaust manifold merged to the turbo. Like ideally, you want the turbo to be the restriction in the exhaust. I mean, you don't want it to be terribly restrictive, but you don't want the exhaust portion from the cylinder head out to the turbo. You don't want that to be the limitation. You don't want that to be a flow limitation to what you're trying to do with the turbo. You want the turbo to be where all the back pressure is built up. It's built up because this exhaust is trying to get out of the turbo. It's driving the turbine. It's sized relative to whatever the NA power output. And that's the thing. That's what you want to happen. You don't want more back pressure to be built up because of the exhaust manifold and tubing design. Sometimes that happens. Like when I did the test where we tested the header, and we did that single-sided thing. We did that asymmetrical turbo thing where we tested just one side of the V8 feeding the turbo. And so we did the header versus the log style, and the log style was much more responsive. And that's certainly true. I mean, we know that because we did the test. But at what point does that become, and it's doing that because it's smaller, but also because ultimately it would be more restrictive. It's not going to flow as much exhaust as the header that we use is going to flow. So for an ultimate thing, for big power, the header's the way to go. That's what I use on the Big Bang motor. So we didn't use the Fowler log style manifold. For a street car where response rate was important, and particularly if I was doing a biggish turbo on a smallish motor, that would be a good way to get better response. But at some point, you're going to have this, the consideration is going to be for this trade-off. At what point does that, do you get all that response, like with the small turbo? Do you get all the response and then trade, more power or buildup of back pressure or whatever. That's always going to kind of be the trade-off. And that's inherent in all of these things. We can't have 2,000 or 3,000 horsepower worth of power and then also have it be, have all of our boost at 1,000 RPM, off idle, like the kids talk about. You can't have that. So there's going to be some sort of trade-off. So where is that trade-off acceptable to you? Is it way more important to have immediate boost response? Is that medium important? So you're okay with a little bit of lag, and then, but you want to, or do you care about, like, all I care about is this thing's going to 8,000, and all I care about is it makes lots of power, like the Bonneville thing that we did for the Civic. Is it that, or a drag race application where we have converter and a two-step and all the things that we need to take care of the problematic situations that would be associated with having the big turbo and getting the thing spooled up? You can solve problems in a different manner. But if you're driving around on the street, then you're, like I said, most guys are going to want this response thing, and then their trade-off area would be shifted down lower in the RPM range. Something to think about. Didn't you prove log manifolds work better for boost? No, not as I just discussed, not as a universal thing. I didn't prove that at all. All I did was prove that the log manifold, in the test that we did, the two things that I compared, one of them was definitely more responsive than the other. But, ultimately, at what cost? At what point is that trade-off going to come into? Sometimes the eBay turbo kits are worth it just for the manifolds and the fittings. I agree. I mean, I'm not one of those people that think that, everything China, that's bad. That's just nonsense. I've used lots of stuff and tested lots of things over the years. The CX Racing stuff is our good examples. Various intake manifolds from professional products, and all of those things. What you do is just like with people. You meet a person, and the person may be this or this or this or this, but you meet the person. If the person's a good person, they're a good person. If you test the intake manifold and it works, it's a good intake manifold. It doesn't matter where it came from. So, I mean, its country of origin or whatever is not going to determine whether it's good or bad, because there's lots of stuff that's made here that's terrible by various people, and the same thing elsewhere. Should I put a turbo on my 2000 Jeep? Well, are you trying to get it to make more power? I don't know. There should be for that 4-liter engine. There should be lots of available stuff for that. Aren't there heads and cams, intake manifolds, and like how much power how much money do you want to spend? A turbo is usually a fairly easy thing to do, and usually on an inline 6-cylinder, a lot of times there's a lot of room. Although I don't know if that 6-cylinder is a crossflow head or not. Sometimes that can be problematic. Sometimes you can run the exhaust from a non-crossflow head over to the other side, like a 240Z engine is a good example. Run the turbo over to the other side where there's room, and then have it go into the manifold. That all of that stuff is possible. We had some problems with max speeding turbos, but their customer service is great. Replace everything. That's good. 502 big block makes 650 horsepower, 10-1. 248, 254. Do you think you can make 700 with a different cam with these 319 heads, or do you think I need bigger heads? I don't know what those heads flow, so I don't know how much power they support. I don't know what heads they are, so there's no way for me to know that. And I don't know what intake manifold you have. I'm running 35-inch tires. Yeah, so you're probably going to like the GM guy. You're probably going to like more torque for that thing. So a turbo is a really good way to go, because not only does it add 50 or 100 horsepower or whatever it is you want it to add, it's going to add at least that much torque too. And that's the good thing. If you take a look at going from, let's say 350 horsepower, and I did this post on social media where I asked them, well, would you rather have a 500 horsepower NA 5.3 or 500 horsepower turbo 5.3? And the thing is, a 500 horsepower NA 5.3 is going to be a high RPM thing, and it's in some cases is going to make less torque than than a lower horsepower one. Although if you run a fast manifold, we can get to 500 with that. That usually does fairly well in the torque department. If you run these short runner manifolds, like a high ram or a low ram or a BTR Trinity or any of the ones that are going to make more peak power, but they chop a whole bunch of the torque off. A turbo 500 horsepower 5.3 is a stock cam and just boost. And so it's going to make peak power at like 54 or 5,500 RPM, and it's going to make all the torque. So it's going to have, you know, we make like 350 and 380 or something like that. So it's going to make, if it makes 500 horsepower, it's probably going to make 550 foot-pounds. And so it's going to be a really, really good combination. So the same thing with that 6-cylinder. It's just going to add, and since that 6-cylinder probably makes peak power before 5,000 RPM, you're just going to do nothing but making torque. It's going to be good. And obviously, in a four-wheel drive thing, torque is your friend. Should I test the low buck eBay turbo kit? 93% are saying yes. Have you tested Promax 290 big block Chevy heads? I don't think so. I think the only ones I've tested are bigger than that. I remember testing a set of CNC ported Promax heads, but I think that they were 340s or something like that. And they did really well. They didn't make Airflow Research head power, but they weren't terribly far off. So they would be good in comparison to other stuff. Yeah, Evan, if you're, I'm sure that those heads have to flow at least 350 CFM. Thinking that's got to be an easy thing. Probably if they're ported at all, maybe 360 or 370, which would be enough to support that. More camshaft could get you to 700. And I don't know if you have a tunnel ram, but if you have a tunnel ram, and if you milled those heads and put a little and put a thinner head gasket on, got some more compression out of it. But watch, piston to valve clearance is probably not a problem with the pistons that you have in that, because on a 502 at 10-to-1, you're going to have a dome, and that's probably going to have a valve relief also. So if you ran a 260 at 50 camshaft and something that's going to be, I don't know what the lift is on that, but I'm sure it's going to be, that's got to be high 600s, low 700 kind of thing lift. You know, it's going to be more of a racy kind of deal, but it could definitely, if they'll flow that much, it could support that much power. 98 Bravada, max being rods, 3582, Cruiser Marine intake, fuel injection. I've got the exhaust manifold or blow off valve yet. Engine spun a bearing. Yeah, that's enough turbo for that. Single plane intake, blueprint heads, part number, aluminum heads. Okay, yeah, I don't. It's a blueprint as cast head then. 8013. Assembled big block Chevy heads, blueprint engines. Let's see if they tell you how much they flow. Uh, 331. Yeah, you're gonna be hard pressed to get there with that head. It's gonna. I mean, I'm not saying you can't. It's just harder to get there. If it's a single plane intake and it's a 4150 intake manifold, and you have a 4150 carburetor on there, a Dominator Super Victor will help it. A tunnel ram, even the YN tunnel ram with two 750s or something like that on there would definitely help it make more. And the YN tunnel ram will help it make a lot more average power too, way more than a single plane. It will be more peak and more average power, which would be good. But some guys don't want to run dual quad tunnel rams. I don't know if that's a street car or not, but or what it's being used for. Have I ever seen a boosted 300 inline six? If you're talking about a Ford, then yes, I have. The guys from Power Nation did that. They did a fuel injected one. They made pretty good power with theirs, I think. Oh, that's a pretty good sized camshaft in it. Made over 500 horsepower. Yeah, so that was good. Yeah, like I said, I like those guys. I like their stuff. I've never tested one though. I've never run an inline 6 on the engine dyno. Near. They painted that thing all white too. It looks good. And they sound really unique. I remember running the 292 Chevy on the dyno. The buzzing half dozen. That got him 1.2 million views. That's a lot. Oh, and so did their oh, and they redid it and repainted everything. It looked good. They did a nice job on it. I think it looks good. 6,500 RPM, Gen 6 big block with a 396 crank. Why do you want to do a 396 crank? You're just going to take power away from it if you do that. A Gen 6 big block Chevy will rev to 6,500 with the crank that it has without any problem at all. You just need to, if you want to make power there, you just have to cam it and put the right heads and intake manifold on it. And 6,500 is not hard at all. Well, hello. What are you doing, huh? What are you doing? Come here. Come here. Hello, handsome. Hello. What are you doing, huh? What are you doing? Hello, Brady. What are you doing, huh? What are you doing, huh? Okay, go see him. Hey, don't go steal stuff from his room. He walks around. He tries to get socks to eat. I just wanted our RPM possibly have the potential for 7. The crank is not what holds back RPM potential of the big block. That's not a problem. There are big blocks that go way beyond that. That dog's name is Brady, and his brother's name is Bruno. They're both Goldens. Is it possible to stroke the 4.3? I don't know on the, I think Scat may have done cranks for those, but it's a split pin crank. So it's not like it's a, and I don't know how the market was for that. So you should make a 427 if my math is right. Yeah, my point though is, why are you taking power away from it? Why don't you just leave the displacement that you have and make all the power? What flow number head would you think would be best for 700 horsepower? It's a 72 Chevelle. Like I said, if you divide that number in half, that would be 350 CFM. That's roughly what you would want to make that power level. That makes it easier. Doesn't guarantee it. It'd be better if it was 360 or 370. It just makes it easier to do that. But you have to have the other things that go along with that. You have to have the right intake manifold. You have the right camshaft. All of that stuff. The exact turbo kit here in the thumbnail would work great with an HX40 clone with an internal wastegate. Is an HX30 a T3? Love to see a 4.3 turbo with a T56 behind it. Yeah, we won't be. First of all, thank you, fun guy. We won't be putting the engine. We won't be connecting it to a transmission. We're just running it on the engine dyno. So it will go on the engine dyno, and then we'll do. We're going to evaluate what the cam upgrade was worth. So we're putting a custom cam that I had ground. We may do some other things like ported heads or something, but I'm going to put extra ring gap in it, and then maybe try this low dollar turbo kit before I put the Super Richie turbo kit on it. Just the shorty headers with our slightly bigger turbo. Not that it probably needs that, but it's probably going to need something bigger than the T3 is. Who knows? Maybe we find out that the T3 is the way to go with a 200 horsepower. There. Do you agree that large rec port heads on a 454 are worse for drag racing than an oval port head? For instance, an AFR 290 versus an AFR 335 head. No, I don't agree universally that rec port heads are worse for drag racing than oval port heads are. What I agree with is that you can pick a cylinder head to help your specific combination, not a universal oval port versus rec port kind of thing. What I know, because we've done it before, is on the oval port heads. I think we've made 900 with I think it was a 300 oval port. But like I said, on the big block stuff, if you have more head flow and you have the cam and the motor to take advantage of it, it's just easier to make power with more head flow. Who said no to watching Richard put a cheap turbo kit to the test? Yeah. Which I still have my Astrovan. Yeah, I would like to test some of the factory fuel injection stuff, but just I don't want to do the poppet valve deal. I wouldn't mind doing the later one or the Mercury Marine stuff. AI says Pulsar GTX 3067 for what, a 4.3 liter? I don't listen to AI. AI has done this many tests. Freaked out my mom the other day. I replaced the ignition coil on our car without turning off the engine. The 4.3 is better to run the marine manifold for a cheap setup. But a 4.3, that marine manifold is not a cheap setup. That's the problem with it, is that those are not inexpensive to buy. And then I don't know if a guy is swapping the marine setup on there, is he doing that? Are you doing that in an S10 or an Astrovan where you're running the factory fuel injection? Because I think that's going to be problematic. If you're doing it with a standalone, then it doesn't really matter. But I don't know that you hook all that up with the factory mass air meter and all that stuff. Blueprint 502 crate motor. I was always curious why the rev is only 6,000. Seems to have good springs. Is it like a hydraulic roller? But I think it's capable of 6,500. I don't condone revving the motor just to rev the motor. We rev the motor normally to where it makes peak power or a little bit beyond where it makes peak power, but we just don't keep revving it because it can rev. There's no reason to do that. You have to find out where the thing wants to make power. And so all of the things combined together to have it make a certain amount of power. we know that crate motor will rev past 6,000 RPM. A 6-liter LQ9 with heads cam and intake, spraying a 150 to 200 shot. Would you expect substantial top-end gains using 1 7/8 versus 1 3/4 headers, or substantially similar results to the 383 comparison? I wouldn't expect big gains going to 1 7/8 headers from 1 3/4 headers. 2000 Blazer with a bad spider setup. Yeah, I just don't know how the harness is all going to work and how the EFI setup is all going to work on that. I've never gone down the rabbit hole and looked on YouTube or anywhere and found out where a guy swapped one of those for the other one and then made all the factory fuel injection work. I'm guessing the newer marine intakes aren't cast anymore. You mean they're not making them anymore? Yeah, I don't know about that. I wouldn't think. This was a long time ago, obviously, that they were doing that. But I don't know how much later they continued making the marine stuff, because they used those in a lot of boats for a long time. And I don't know how long they kept doing that, or whether or not they kept making those marine motors after they stopped making them for car applications and truck applications. But one guy did reach out to me about doing a turbo on some of these factory intake manifolds, even with the spider injection stuff. And he was giving me information on how to do it. But I just don't have any experience with any of the factory stuff. I mean, we could look at it and see, and you're just getting more fuel into it. And as long as we could control the timing, which is even more critical, it's fairly easy to get more fuel to stuff. But getting the timing right usually requires, being able to access the tuning stuff. Should I test the low block eBay turbo kit for the 4.3-liter V6 before doing my own? What 8% would say no to that? Just got one more minute. Power Nation. I wish I would have went to SEMA just so I could have talked to Pat or any of those guys. I'd like to go visit those guys and I'd like to do a test with them. One more minute. If you have questions, get them in, because I can get. Is a turbo available to fit realistically in the Astrovan of an 05? I don't know that this kit fits. I'm sure it wasn't designed for any kind of application, it doesn't look like. So I don't know if it fits around all the factory stuff. That's something you have to find out. There. Oh, capital locks, yo. Be rebalanced. Okay, there we go. It's live. It's all the way live. Do you like NA or turbo on big Chevys? All of those, yes. And nitrous. Any small but Ford live streams coming up? Yeah, we can talk about it, whatever you want. What did you want to talk about? Doghouse has low clearance even with a 2-inch body lift. Can you test the new Max Speeding Rod 660 turbo? I don't have one of those. I don't think I have. I ran a couple of their 3076s. Really enjoyed the content. Thank you guys all for showing up. I will be back tomorrow.